Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jessica, and I lost my dad to suicide when I was 28 years old.
Awesome.
I think forgiveness, there's two pieces of forgiveness. So I think, yeah, I do think that I needed to forgive my dad, but I also needed to forgive myself. And I think the forgiveness of myself was harder than forgiving him. I mean, it's really, really hard to like hate somebody and like resent them for a long period of time when they die so tragically and you know they're in such pain. So for me, the essential that the forgiveness for him, it kind of just came because it needed to come. But I had to work really hard to forgive myself and not being able to prevent this death. And nobody blamed me. I mean, my family, my sister knew that he had told me that he was, feeling suicidal. We had talked a lot. So, I mean, there was never, ever any blame on anybody's side other than myself. So I think to ever move forward in life and to ever kind of like live again, per se, I had to forgive myself. I promise life does get better. And it's so hard to see in those first months after you lose someone. I mean, you're in such a fog, and the reality of the situation. I mean, your brain doesn't even have time to really conceptualize what has just happened, and it takes a long time for that to really set in. But I think there's such a sense of helplessness after you lose somebody to suicide that it can just feel like your life was just taken over, and somebody else, you're a puppet and somebody else is pulling the strings. And I think what I always tell people, I just got contacted actually through the blog by somebody who just lost somebody 3 weeks ago. And it's, it really does get better, but you can't try to do it on your own. I think it's a really difficult experience to try to process on your own, or to even rely on, your friends and your family members to help you process it. I think that we all need kind of this safe space, whether it's, finding a support group, finding a good therapist, or, I know people who have found great kind of online forums that have worked for them. But I think connecting with I highly encourage people to connect with somebody else who's had a shared experience, just so you don't feel alone. I mean, there's a reason there's meetings like Al-Anon in the country for people who have experienced living with somebody who battles an addiction. I mean, I would love to see survivor groups spread throughout the nation, because it is not easy to mourn the loss of somebody who has left you so tragically and so violently a lot of times. So know you're not alone. There definitely are people who understand, and know that life can be good again. Life can even be better than it was before. It just takes time, and it's peeling the layers of that onion. Just when you think you've kind of got to the center of it, all of a sudden there's this whole new petal that presents itself. Those are some of the things. And I will add, don't think that there's this like beginning and end to grief, because there isn't. I mean, certainly we begin to mourn the loss of somebody that we lost right after the suicide, but there aren't stages, there aren't steps, there's no fluidity when it comes to suicide. So, if one day you have a really good day and then the next day you have a really terrible day, it doesn't mean that you've like not progressed. It just means you're human. I mean, my dad's been gone for 4 years, and I cried last night watching the Super Bowl, because football was our connection. We always talked football. And that was our thing. And so to not be able to have him here to just talk football with stinks. I hate that I'm not able to have that. But am I still denying that he's died? No, but I miss him, and I'm going to miss him every day. And with every life experience that happens, I'm going to miss him. And that's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have bad days. So don't look for the blueprint for grief, because there isn't one. So we truly did it to talk about suicide, so that it's not such a taboo topic, and to just help people feel like there's somebody out there in the world who understands what they're going through. And that's where this whole idea came from, to start Our Side of Suicide. So it really opened my eyes to mental illness. I mean, I knew about the stigma of mental illness before, but I think I, I understand it to be different. And I think there's an element of it that we don't talk about in society. And I think it is, certainly there's the individuals who suffer with chronic mental illness, but there's also the people who silently suffer that you just don't know about, that suffer with depression and anxiety, but are still able to kind of go to work and are able to get up in the morning, and they don't look like, the standard television commercial that you see with the woman who can't get out of bed and she's crying and it's raining outside and, woe is me. Depression doesn't always look like that. It can also be the woman who is at work operating just fine, but then goes home and doesn't have any energy left for anything else in her life. And I think that that's what I've just become more aware of, is how many people were silently suffering with mental illness when they died by suicide. I thought about it. Was the first person to say suicide is a selfish act. I had an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, who lost her dad. And I remember when being told, the first thing I said, not to her, but to another friend, was, wow, that is so selfish of him. And then, I'm touched by it, and the same thing happens to my dad. And my view has completely changed by that. But yes, I think also through the blog, and not only through the blog, but being a grief therapist and hearing how everybody processes the experience. That's why I say that there is no blueprint for grief, because no two people have the same relationship with another person. So a brother and sister grieve the loss of their dad very, very, very differently, because they had a different relationship with their dad or with their mom or with another sibling. And so, it's interesting with the blog, we see what people are searching for when they come to our site. And one of the number one search terms that we see is stages of grief, suicide, stages of grief after suicide. When does pain end after suicide? And I think that has touched me more than anything, and breaks my heart, because I see it every single day, the amount of people that are typing this in. And I think that, yeah, certainly my perception and with mental illness has changed, but also I have a tremendous frustration with how we deal with grief in our country, and how we think it's just, you just get over it, right? Somebody dies, they're no longer here, so you just get over it. And it leaves us as a survivor feeling so isolated and so alone, and, very shameful, and not able to talk about it. And I think I understand this process as a survivor, not so much as a survivor, but as a clinical therapist. So, but I think there's so many survivors that don't understand that think they're grieving wrong. And I see that a lot with the blog, is people thinking that they're not doing it right. And it makes me so sad that there's even this notion that there's this way you should be grieving this person that you lost. And that if there's one thing I could change about the world we live in, it would be to change the perception of what people think about grief, because it's